The gavel cracked like a gunshot in the packed school board meeting, silencing the murmurs as Principal Hargrove's voice sliced through the air. David Ellis is a distraction to the learning environment. His behavior undermines the values we hold dear here in Willow Creek. David's heart slammed against his ribs, the words landing like fists. But it was Joseph's hand slipping from his under the table that shattered him completely. In that frozen instant, as the room erupted in applause from the conservative crowd, David saw it all. The betrayal in Joseph's averted eyes, the flickering fluorescent lights mirroring the storm brewing in his soul, and the faint scar on his own wrist from the night they'd sworn forever under the stars. Willow Creek High sat squat and unyielding on the edge of Ohio's Rust Belt heartland, a brick fortress built in the 1950s when conformity was king and secrets were buried deeper than the coal mines that once fed the town. It was the kind of place where Friday night football lights outshone the stars, and the annual bake sale funded more than just band uniforms. It greased the wheels of small-town politics. David Ellis had grown up in the shadow of those lights, the son of a laid-off steelworker and a diner waitress who dreamed of escaping to Cleveland but never quite managed the gas money. At 18, David was the anomaly. Valedictorian-bound, with a scholarship to Ohio State dangling like a lifeline, and a quiet fire in his hazel eyes that whispered of worlds beyond the cornfields. He'd always known he was different. The crushes on the quarterback in middle school, the way his stomach flipped when Joseph Ramirez laughed during algebra class sophomore year. It wasn't confusion. It was clarity, sharp as the winter wind off Lake Erie. Joseph, with his easy grin and sun-kissed skin from summers at his abuela's in Toledo, had been the first to notice. They met properly at a volunteer cleanup by the polluted Cuyahoga River, both knee-deep in trash bags, trading jokes about how the water looked like it could dissolve regrets. "Your trouble, Ellis?" Joseph had said, wiping mud from David's cheek with a thumb that lingered too long. Trouble. It was the best word David ever heard. By junior year, they were inseparable. Study sessions bleeding into stolen kisses behind the bleachers. Hands intertwined under diner booths at midnight. Joseph's family ran the local taqueria, a beacon of warmth in a town that eyed immigrants like stray dogs. But he carried it all with a shrug and a smile. "We make our own family," he'd murmur against David's neck, and for a while it felt true. They dreamed big. David to law school, fighting for the overlooked, Joseph to graphic design in Chicago, sketching murals of queer icons that would make Willow Creek blush. It was romance wrapped in rebellion, the kind that made David's chest ache with something holy. But Willow Creek didn't bend for holy aches. The whispers started small. Glances in the halls, notes slipped into lockers calling them fags in faded Sharpie. David ignored them, chin up like his mom taught him after his dad walked out. Joseph laughed them off, but David saw the tension in his jaw, the way he'd scanned parking lots for his father's truck. Then came the incident with Tommy Hargrove, the principal's golden boy son, a linebacker with a chip on his shoulder bigger than his shoulder pads. It happened after practice one muggy September evening. David was waiting for Joseph by the field, backpack slung over one shoulder, when Tommy and his crew cornered him against the chain-link fence. "Think you're special, Ellis? Parading around with that spick like it's prom season." Tommy's breath reeked of cheap energy drinks, his buddies snickering like hyenas. David straightened, heart pounding but voice steady. "Walk away, Tommy. This ain't your fight." But Tommy lunged, fist connecting with David's jaw in a blur of red and white. The punch wasn't just pain. It was a declaration. David swung back, wild and desperate, catching Tommy's nose with a crack that echoed like thunder. Blood sprayed. Tommy's, not David's. And suddenly it was 3-on-1, boots and knuckles raining down until Joseph's shout cut through the fray. "Get off him!" Joseph barreled in like a freight train, shoving Tommy into the dirt and dragging David to his feet. They ran, Joseph's arm around David's waist, breaths ragged under the sodium glow of street lamps. In the safety of Joseph's beat-up Chevy, parked in the empty lot of the old mill, David touched his swelling lip and laughed through the sting. "My hero." Joseph kissed him fierce, tasting of salt and fury. "No one's touching you again. I swear." They reported it the next day, naively clutching each other in the principal's office like it was a shield. Hargrove, a man with a tie straighter than his morals and a mustache that screamed 1980s cop drama, leaned back in his creaky chair, eyes flicking between them like they were exhibits in a sideshow. Boys roughhousing. Happens all the time. Tommy says you provoked him, David. Something about distracting the team. The word hung there, slimy and deliberate. David felt it coil in his gut. Joseph squeezed his knee under the desk, but Hargrove's gaze sharpened on their closeness. We'll handle it internally. No need for police. Wouldn't want to stir up unnecessary attention. It was the first crack in the facade. For weeks, they played it cool, holding hands only in the taqueria's back alley, whispers confined to late-night texts. But the bullying escalated. Slurs scrawled on David's locker, his car keys, accidentally, flushed down a gym toilet. Joseph found a tire slashed one morning, the word queer carved deep into the rubber. This town's rotting us from the inside, David muttered as they patched it with Joseph's spare. Joseph pulled him close, foreheads touching. Then we burn it down together. You're worth the fight. The romance deepened in those shadows, a desperate bloom. They drive to the quarry outside town, where the water gleamed like sapphire under moonlight, and stripped down to swim naked, bodies tangling in the cool depths. Joseph's hands mapped David's scars, the faint ones from childhood falls, the fresh bruises from Tommy's fists, like they were constellations. You're beautiful, he'd say, voice rough with want, and David would believe him, arching into touches that felt like salvation. They made love there once, slow and reverent, the stars witnessing promises etched in skin. I love you, David whispered afterward, tracing Joseph's tattoo. A small rainbow flag inked on his ribcage during a rebellious spring break. More than this town, more than anything. Joseph's reply was a kiss that tasted like forever. But forevers in Willow Creek were fragile as autumn leaves. The school board meeting loomed like a storm cloud, called after parents, Tommy's included, demanded discipline for the disruption David caused. Whispers flew. He was too affectionate in the halls, too vocal in GSA meetings, too everything for a boy who didn't fit the mold. Joseph begged him not to go alone. They'll eat you alive. David shook his head, steel in his spine. I have to. For us. For every kid like me. So they sat side by side in the community center's folding chairs, the air thick with mothballs and malice. And then the gavel fell. Hargrove's proclamation wasn't just words. It was a guillotine. David Ellis is a distraction. The room applauded. A wave of self-righteous thunder, and David's world tilted. He turned to Joseph, expecting fire, but found only downcast eyes, a hand withdrawing like he'd been burned. Betrayal bloomed hot and immediate. Had Joseph known? Was this his out? The meeting blurred into chaos. Parents shouting support for traditional values. A few allies like Ms. Rivera, the art teacher, calling for fairness. But Joseph slipped away in the melee, texting later, "Need space. This is too much." David's reply died unsent, fingers trembling over the screen. That night, alone in his cramped bedroom with posters of Ruth Bader Ginsburg peeling at the edges, David paced until dawn. The hook of it all, the punch, the promise, the pullback, replayed like a bad reel. He loved Joseph with a ferocity that scared him, the kind that poets died for, but love in Willow Creek was a loaded gun. By morning, resolve hardened, he'd fight. Not for the town, but for the boy who'd made him believe in more. Little did he know, the real war was just beginning. Superintendent Ellis. Wait, no relation, thank God. A silver-haired relic named Harlan Crow watched from the back row that night with eyes like polished flint. Crow, who'd risen through the ranks on handshakes and hush money, saw potential in the powder keg. But cracks in his armor were forming, whispers of his own buried past threatening to surface. As David stormed out into the rain-slicked parking lot, fists clenched against the chill, he didn't see Crow lingering by the door, phone to his ear, murmuring, "It's worse than we thought. Pull the files." The distraction label stuck like tar, plastered on every memo, every hushed conversation. David's classes turned hostile. Teachers averting eyes, students snickering behind cupped hands. He poured it into essays, into advocacy, but the weight pressed down. Joseph avoided him for days, then weeks, excuses piling up like unpaid bills. Family stuff, he'd say in stolen hallway glances, but his touch was gone, the warmth replaced by a wall David couldn't scale. Heartbreak carved hollows under his eyes, but he channeled it, organizing a secret support group in the library basement, where kids like shy freshman Luca shared stories of hiding who they were. One evening, as rain hammered the windows, Luca confessed, "They say you're getting expelled for being you." David's laugh was bitter. "They can try." But inside, fear gnawed. Expulsion meant no diploma, no scholarship, no escape. He texted Joseph one last time, "We need to talk. Please." The reply came hours later. "Tomorrow. Quarry. 8 p.m. Hope flickered, fragile as a match in wind. The quarry at dusk was a cathedral of stone and silence, jagged cliffs rising like ancient guardians around the glassy water. David arrived early, gravel crunching under his sneakers, the air heavy with pine and impending storm. He'd rehearsed 1,000 speeches in his head. Accusations, pleas, the raw truth of how Joseph's silence carved deeper than any slur. But when Joseph's Chevy rumbled up, headlights cutting the gloom, all words evaporated. He stepped out, hoodie zipped to his chin, face shadowed but familiar, and David's chest cracked open. "Joe," David started, voice rough as the rocks. Joseph held up a hand, eyes darting like a cornered animal. "Not yet. Hear me out." They walked the shoreline, stones skipping across the surface in erratic paths, mirroring the chaos between them. Joseph confessed in fragments. The pressure from his dad, fresh off a layoff at the auto plant, ranting about queer agendas ruining the country. The threats from Tommy's crew, egged on by Hargrove's indifference. "They cornered me after practice. Said if I didn't back off, they'd make your life hell. Worse than it is." David's blood ran cold. "So you just left after everything?" Joseph stopped, turning with eyes wet and wild. "I thought I was protecting you. Staying close makes you a target." "God, David, I love you so much it hurts." The admission hung there, a lifeline tossed into the abyss. David grabbed his shirt, pulling him close, foreheads colliding in a mess of breath and tears. "You don't get to decide that alone. We're in this or we're nothing." Their kiss was fury and forgiveness, hands fisting fabric, bodies pressing as if to merge and mend. Under the cliff's overhang, they tumbled to the damp earth, urgency stripping away layers, shirts, doubts, the town's invisible chains. Joseph's mouth on his collarbone, David's fingers in his hair. It was reclamation, a vow renewed in sweat and whispers. "Never again," Joseph gasped, moving inside him with a tenderness that bordered on worship. Afterward, tangled in the fading light, they planned. Expose the bullying, demand accountability. Love, it seemed, was their sharpest weapon. But dawn brought reality's bite. The school, the noose tightened. A memo circulated. Counseling sessions mandatory for students exhibiting disruptive behaviors. David's name topped the list, disguised as concern but reeking of control. Ms. Rivera pulled him aside in the art room, surrounded by half-finished canvases of vibrant abstracts that screamed what the town suppressed. "Harlan Crow's involved now. Watch your back, he's got skeletons." David nodded, filing it away, but the real shock came at lunch, when Joseph slid into the seat across from him, tray clattering like defiance. "I'm done hiding." Heads turned, whispers rising, but for the first time, David smiled genuinely. Their hands brushed on the table, visible, unapologetic. The backlash was swift. Tommy's crew escalated. Lockers vandalized with slurs in red paint, distraction, scrawled like a brand. David found his GSA flyers shredded in the trash, rainbow pins stamped under heels. Joseph faced it too. His truck egged in the taqueria lot, his abuela fielding hate calls from concerned parents. Yet in the stolen moments, the brush of fingers in crowded halls, the notes slipped into back pockets, they found fuel. One night, after a particularly brutal assembly on family values that painted queer lives as cautionary tales. They drove to the riverfront, bottles of pilfered beer from the diners lost and found clinking in the cup holder. "To us," Joseph toasted, clinking against David's. The alcohol loosened tongues, stories spilling. David's first crush on a camp counselor, Joseph's secret sketches of them as superheroes. Laughter mingled with kisses, the Cuyahoga's murky flow a metaphor for their tangled hearts. Deeper into autumn, leaves turning crimson like warning flags, the conflict crested. The school administration summoned David to Crow's office, a wood-paneled sanctum smelling of old books and older lies. Crow, perched behind a desk cluttered with faded diplomas, steepled his fingers. "Son, this town's changing. Cell phones, social media, all that noise. But some things stay sacred. Your relationship with Mr. Ramirez is causing ripples." David leaned forward, pulse thundering. "Ripples? You mean the beatings? The threats?" Crow's smile was oil-slick. "Exaggerations. We've investigated. Tommy's a good boy, misunderstood." It was gaslighting, pure and practiced, but David pressed. "Check the security footage from the field that night." Crow's eyes flickered. "A tell, small but seismic. Footage? Malfunctioned. I'm afraid." David stormed out, texting Joseph. "They covered it up. We need proof." That evening, they broke into the school's AV room after hours, hearts hammering like war drums. The door creaked open under Joseph's lockpick, a skill from bored summers, and they huddled over dusty consoles, screens flickering to life. There it was, grainy but damning, Tommy's crew descending, Hargrove arriving minutes later, waving them off with a clap on the shoulder. No report filed, no ambulance called. "Holy shit," Joseph breathed, downloading to his phone. Betrayal's second wave hit. Not just the schools, but the realization of how deep it ran. Crow, Hargrove, they weren't protectors. They were architects of silence. Emboldened, they rallied allies. Ms. Rivera smuggled them copies of old complaints. Yellowed papers from queer kids expelled a decade ago for conduct unbecoming. Luca joined, his quiet courage a spark. Even quiet kid Ethan, outed by a leaked Snapchat, added his voice. They drafted a petition, circulated in whispers and Dropbox links, signatures mounting like an army. Romance wove through it all. Joseph sketching protest posters with intertwined hands, David kissing charcoal smudges from his cheek. "You're my muse," Joseph murmured one night in David's bed. Parents working late shifts. They moved slow, exploratory, mapping new territories with lips and limbs, the creak of the mattress a symphony of safety. "I was scared I'd lose you," David admitted, tracing Joseph's spine. "Never," came the vow, sealed in the quiet afterglow. But fear festered elsewhere. Joseph's dad confronted him over Pozole one Sunday, spoon clattering into the bowl. "That Ellis boy, he's poison. Dragging you into this mess." Joseph fired back, voice steady for the first time. "He's the best thing in my life, Dad. Deal with it." The fallout was a week of cold shoulders. But Joseph's abuela slipped him empanadas and a wink. "A more wins, mijo." David, meanwhile, bore the brunt at home. His mom, exhausted from double shifts, pleading, "Just keep your head down, baby. College is close." He hugged her tight, hiding the bruises blooming from an accidental shove in the stairwell. Winter crept in, snow dusting the football field like forgotten confetti. The petition hit 200 signatures, a number that felt revolutionary in a town of 5,000. They presented it at the next board meeting, David at the podium, voice amplified by Joseph's grip on his elbow offstage. "This isn't about distraction. It's about protection for all of us." Cheers erupted from the back, allies waving signs. "Love isn't the crime," but Hargrove countered, face purpled. "Slanderous accusations. We'll sue for defamation." Crow nodded solemnly, but his eyes, those flinty eyes, betrayed a fracture. As the meeting adjourned in uproar, he pulled David aside in the hallway, voice low. "Meet me tomorrow. Alone. There's more to this." David left with a chill unrelated to the frost. Joseph waited in the truck, engine rumbling. What did the old man want? David slid in, leaning for a kiss that lingered, grounding. Trouble, probably, but we've got each other. They drove home through flurries, hands linked over the gearshift, the radio crooning Springsteen, anthems for blue-collar hearts. That night, in the warmth of Joseph's room, posters of Basquiat and Frida staring down benevolently, they made plans and love in equal measure. Joseph's body over his, strong and sure, whispered assurances against David's skin. We'll expose them all. Climax built like a wave, crashing in shared gasps, leaving them boneless and bound. But as sleep claimed them, David's phone buzzed. An anonymous text. Crow's hiding his own sins. Dig deeper. The hook of uncertainty tugged anew. What skeletons did the superintendent guard? And how far would he go to keep them buried? January in Willow Creek was a gray shroud, skies weeping sleet onto slushy streets, mirroring the chill settling in David's bones. The anonymous text burned a hole in his pocket all night, a digital phantom urging him toward forbidden doors. He showed it to Joseph over coffee at the taqueria before school, steam curling like secrets between them. Could be a trap, Joseph warned, dark eyes scanning the empty dining room. David's abuela bustled in the kitchen, humming rancheras that clashed with the tension. Or truth. Crow's too calm. It's unnatural. They agreed, investigate, but smart. No more break-ins. This time, they charm the ghosts. Ms. Rivera proved invaluable, her artist's intuition sharper than scalpels. In the faculty lounge, amid vending machine hums and lukewarm coffee, she spilled what she knew. Harlan was different once. Rumors from the 80s before he married Evelyn. A boyfriend in college, some scandal hushed up by his daddy's donations. She slid a manila folder across the scarred table. Clippings from yellowed newspapers, tragic accident claims, young local headlines masking a car crash that screamed cover-up. He drinks alone now. Evelyn left years ago. David traced a faded photo. Crow, young and laughing, arm around a man with Joseph's easy smile. Echoes of their own fragility. Armed with this, David met Crow as summoned, the superintendent's office now feeling like a confessional booth. Crow poured scotch from a desk drawer, uncharacteristic generosity glinting in his eyes. To understanding, son. David sipped, the burn steadying him. The footage, the complaints. It's systemic. Crow leaned back, chair groaning like confession. Willow Creek's built on band-aids. My indiscretions taught me that. The story poured out in halting bursts. A lover named Elias, outed and ostracized. The crash pinned on reckless driving, but whispered as suicide. Crow's family paid off witnesses, buried reports, molded him into the pillar he became. I covered for Hargrove to protect myself. But seeing you boys, it's like staring at ghosts. Vulnerability cracked the man open, and David saw not monster, but mirror. A boy who'd bent to survive. Help us, David urged, voice soft but steel. Expose it. For Elias. For us. Crow nodded, slow as thawing ice. Files in my home safe. But if this blows, it takes us all. They shook on it. A pact sealed in amber liquid and shared shame. David left lighter, texting Joseph. We have an ally. Dinner at mine. The reply, bring wine. And you. Romance reignited in domestic bliss. David's mom out for bingo. The tiny apartment alive with takeout tacos and tangled limbs on the sagging couch. Joseph's laughter bubbled as David recounted the meeting, exaggerating Crow's mustache twitch for effect. Hero complex now? Joseph teased, nipping at his ear. What followed was playful, heated, David straddling him, grinding slow to the rhythm of a forgotten radio ballad. Clothes shed in a trail to the bedroom. They explored with laughter-laced urgency, Joseph's hands pinning wrists, David's teeth grazing throat, building to a crescendo that left them gasping, entwined in sheets scented with home. But alliances were fragile as new snow. Word leaked, Hargrove spies everywhere, and retaliation struck fast. The next day, Joseph was yanked from class for inappropriate conduct. Hargrove's mustache quivering as he brandished a parent's complaint. Public displays in the cafeteria. It was the handbrush weaponized. Suspended for a week, Joseph stormed out, but not before locking eyes with David across the quad. A promise in the glare. Alone, David felt the isolation keenly, eating lunch in empty stairwells, the petition's momentum stalling under administrative freezes. Luca confided over hushed calls. "They're scaring people off. Tommy threatened my little brother." Rage simmered, romantic idealism clashing with gritty reality. The betrayal David feared most came not from foes, but fractures within. That weekend, holed up in Joseph's suspension exile, they pored over Crow's promise files, scanned PDFs arriving via burner email, incident reports, doctored dates, witness statements vanishing like smoke, proof of the cover-up irrefutable. But amid the digital detritus, a photo. Young Crow and Elias, arms around each other at a pride rally in Columbus, signs reading, "Love wins." Joseph's face paled. This is my uncle." David froze. Elias Ramirez, Joseph's abuela's brother. The family tragedy glossed over at holidays. "He didn't just leave," Joseph whispered, voice breaking. "They killed him." With silence. The revelation hit like shrapnel. Joseph pulled away, pacing the cluttered garage apartment above the taqueria, tools clanging in his wake. All this time, Abuela crying over the lost one. And it was this? Because of guys like Crow. David reached for him, but Joseph flinched. "What if fighting gets you killed too?" "I can't." The words were knives, twisting old wounds. David recoiled, hurt blooming hot. "So that's it? Run again." Accusations flew, voices rising over the sizzle of frying onions below. Joseph confessed the depth. Guilt over Elias, fear for his family, the temptation to transfer out, leave Willow Creek's poison behind. "I love you, but this town's eating us alive. Maybe we end it before it ends us." Heartbreaks Theater. David stormed into the night, sleet stinging like accusations, walking miles to the quarry where their love ignited. He screamed into the void, fists pounding stone until knuckles bled, the pain a poor substitute for Joseph's arms. Back home, curled under thin blankets, he drafted emails to journalists, Cleveland Plain Dealer, even national outlets like The Advocate, attaching files, pouring soul into pleas for justice. But dawn brought regret. He deleted them, not ready to burn bridges without Joseph. Reconciliation came haltingly. Joseph appeared at his door Sunday, eyes red-rimmed, holding a sketchpad. "I drew this instead of running." The pages. Them as warriors. David with a torch illuminating shadows. Joseph shielding with a shield emblazoned, Ramirez. Elias would have fought. "For you." They fell into each other. Apologies murmured against skin. Kisses healing fissures. In the quiet of afternoon light slanting through blinds, they made love deliberately. Slow caresses tracing scars, Joseph's lips on David's bruised knuckles, building to a union that felt like absolution. "I'm all in," Joseph vowed, bodies sinking in rhythm born of survival. Afterward, planning resumed. A press conference, backed by Crow. Spring teased with crocuses pushing through frost, symbolizing stubborn hope. The school buzzed with rumors, tension coiling like a spring. David and Joseph walked halls hand in hand now, a deliberate provocation that drew stares but also sparks. Other kids nodding solidarity, a freshman slipping them a fist bump. Crow delivered. In a clandestine library meet, he handed a USB drive. Everything. Hargrove's emails, too, admitting the payoff to Tommy's family. David's gratitude was fierce. "Why now?" Crow shrugged, vulnerability raw. "Redemption's a bitch. Go get M." But power corrupts absolutely, and Hargrove sensed the shift. He cornered David after gym, sweat slick and snarling in the locker room steam. "Think you're clever? That footage gone. And your little boyfriend? His dad's about to lose his business license." Threat laced with venom. The principal's face inches away, breath hot. David shoved him back, adrenaline surging. "Touch us, and it all unravels." He fled to Joseph, recounting in the truck's cab, hands shaking. Joseph's response was action. Uploading backups to the cloud, alerting allies. The high point of their defiance was the GSA Spring Fair, a modest event in the gym with rainbow cookies and DIY pins. David emceed, voice booming over speakers. We're here, we're queer, and we're not distractions. We're the future. Cheers drowned jeers, Joseph at his side, sketching live portraits of attendees. Romance flickered in the chaos. A stolen dance to indie folk on a boombox, bodies swaying close amid balloons. But as dusk fell, Tommy lurked by the exit, eyes promising payback. That night, betrayal's blade fell true. Joseph got the call at 2 a.m. His dad, arrested for code violations at the taqueria. Hargrove's doing, greased by bored cronies. They say it's health inspection, but it's bullshit. His father growled over speaker. Joseph shattered, blaming himself. The fight, David. This is on us. David drove through pre-dawn fog to the station, bailing him out with savings scraped from odd jobs. In the parking lot, under buzzing fluorescence, Joseph broke. I can't do this. It's destroying my family. The words were a chasm, David's pleas echoing into void. Choose us. Choose love. But Joseph turned away, truck taillights fading like a dying star. Alone, David wept until hollow, the quarry calling him back. He sat on the edge, feet dangling over abyss, phone clutched with unsent texts. The hook of loss. Was this the end? Their romance a casualty of small-town siege? April showers battered Willow Creek like accusations from the sky, turning dirt roads to mud that sucked at tires and souls alike. David's world narrowed to a pinhole. School by rote, meals untouched, nights staring at Joseph's empty side of the bed in fevered dreams. The betrayal wasn't just Joseph's retreat. It was the void it carved, where promises once bloomed. He threw himself into the expose, emailing journalists with Crow's files, but responses were crickets. Local interest only. One polite turned down red. Rage simmered to despair. Was their fight futile? Love just another distraction? Joseph's silence stretched, a week becoming two, glimpses in halls like ghosts. David caught him once by the lockers, eyes pleading. Talk to me. Joseph flinched, glancing at Tommy lurking nearby. Not here. Later. But later never came. Instead, a note in David's backpack. I'm sorry. Staying away keeps you safe. Forgive me. Crumpled in fist. It fueled a bonfire of hurt. At the GSA meeting, Luca noticed the hollows under his eyes. He'll come around. Love like yours doesn't vanish. David nodded, but doubt gnawed. Had Joseph chosen family over them? Survival over soul? Crow became unlikely anchor, summoning David to his lakeside cabin on a rare sunny afternoon. The superintendent's frame diminished against towering pines. Hargrove circling, he warned over black coffee steaming on a warped porch table. Pushed for your expulsion vote next board. David gripped mug, knuckles white. Then we go public. Now. Crow hesitated, then nodded. Elias would have liked you, fierce heart. The mention stung, linking their pains. David confessed the rift with Joseph, voice cracking. He thinks backing off saves me. Crow chuckled bitterly. Same lie I told myself. Love's the fight worth losing for. Inspired, David tracked Joseph to the taqueria after closing, neon Serato sign flickering like a heartbeat. He waited in the alley, rain pattering on dumpsters, until Joseph emerged, trash bag in hand. Joe, please. The plea hung, raw. Joseph dropped the bag, shoulders slumping. Dad's out, but the fines. It's bad. And you, Hargrove's gunning for you because of me. David stepped closer, bridging the gap. Because of us. And that's power, not weakness. Joseph's resolve crumbled, tears mixing with drizzle as he pulled David in, kiss desperate under awnings drip. I was scared. Still am. They stumbled inside, locking door against world, the kitchen's warmth enveloping them like embrace. In the dim glow of hanging bulbs, surrounded by cilantro-scented counters, they reclaimed what fracture stole. Joseph's hands trembled unbuttoning David's shirt, apologies whispered against collarbone. "Forgive me." David nodded, guiding him to the office cot where inventories piled like forgotten dreams. They undressed slow, reverent. Rain's rhythm on tin roof syncing with breaths, touches mapping apologies. Joseph knelt, mouth worshipful, drawing gasps that echoed off walls. David reciprocated, savoring salt and surrender. When they joined, it was poetry. Deep, unhurried thrusts chasing catharsis, climax crashing like thunder, leaving them slick and spent, limbs entwined. "We're unbreakable," David murmured, fingers in Joseph's curls. Dawn found them plotting. A rally, allies mobilized. Unity reignited the fire. They rallied the GSA into a force. Posters wheat-pasted on poles, social media buzzing with Willow Creek truth. Ms. Rivera designed graphics, bold colors screaming justice. Luca organized carpool to Columbus for a queer youth conference, networking with activists. Even Joseph's dad softened, grumbling over breakfast. "If that Ellis kid's got guts, maybe he's all right." Joseph's abuela blessed them with a rosary bead necklace. For protection, Ms. Amores. Romance wove through activism. Picnics by the river, Joseph's sketches immortalizing their march. Midnight drives with windows down, Springsteen blasting anthems of working-class defiance. The board meeting loomed end of April. Jim packed shoulder to shoulder, air electric with anticipation. David and Joseph entered hand in hand, back straight, allies flanking like honor guard. Hargrove's face twisted at the sight, mustache twitching fury. Crow opened, voice steady. "Tonight, we address the Ellis matter." But David seized the mic, amplified by cheers. "Distraction? No, we're the mirror you fear." He played the footage on a projector, gasps rippling as punches landed on screen. Then Crow's bombshell. Stepping to podium, he outed the cover-up. "I've buried truths for decades. Elias Ramirez, my Elias, died because of silence like this." The name drop stunned. Joseph's hand tightened in David's, grief and gratitude mingling. Hargrove lunged, sputtering, "Lies! Slander!" But Crow continued, USB evidence projected. Emails, payoffs, Elias's file. The room fractured. Parents divided. Some weeping, others storming out yelling, "Abomination." Tommy's mom defended, voice shrill, "My boy's innocent." But allies countered. Luca's mom testifying to her own son's bullying. Chaos reigned, fists clenched but held, until police, called by Hargrove, arrived to restore order. David and Joseph were herded out, hearts pounding in the parking lot floodlights, rain resuming like applause. In the aftermath, sanctuary. Joseph's truck, engine idling, bodies crashing together in backseat frenzy. Adrenaline-fueled urgency. Zippers rasped, hands roaming wet skin, Joseph's mouth claiming David's in bites and moans. "We did it," he growled, entering him swift, the rock of suspension matching thrusts. David's nails dug crescents into back, cries muffled against shoulder, release explosive, sealing victory in ecstasy. Together, they panted, aftershocks rippling. But triumph soured swift. Next morning, backlash tsunami. Death threats on socials, taqueria vandalized with slurs in spray paint. Joseph's dad faced IRS audit, Hargrove's tentacles. School suspended classes, board in emergency session. David found his locker emptied, expulsion papers taped inside. For the safety of others, despair clawed back, but Joseph pulled him to the quarry, cliff edge their confessional. "We don't stop." They made a vow there, stripping to swim in chill waters, bodies buoyant with purpose. Underwater kisses, surfacing gasps, love as lifeline. The counterstrike brewed in shadows. Crow resigned publicly, press conference in Cleveland drawing national eyes. CNN snippet on small-town scandal. Donors pulled funding from Hargrove's pet projects. Parents sued for negligence. David and Joseph testified at a state hearing, voices unwavering, hands linked under table. Joseph's uncle's story humanized it, Elias as brother, not footnote. Romance sustained. Stolen weekends in Columbus, hotel rooms with city views, exploring freedom's willow denied. One night, skyline twinkling, they slow danced naked, Joseph's sketches scattered like confetti. "Marry me someday?" he whispered, ringless but real. David's yes was sealed in lovemaking, tender, exploratory, peaks of pleasure affirming futures. Yet climax loomed darker. Tommy, unhinged by exposure, ambushed Joseph after dark in the school lot, pipe swinging wild. "You ruined everything." The blow glanced, but Joseph fought back, fists flying until David, alerted by text, raced in, tackling Tommy down. Sirens wailed, lights flashing. Arrest followed, Hargrove's influence waning. In the ER, Joseph's cracked rib bandaged. David held vigil, kiss to forehead a prayer. My night. Painkillers dulled edges, but deepened intimacy. Gentle touches in sterile room. Whispered plans for summer road trip west. As May bloomed, fractures mended uneven. The board ousted Hargrove amid lawsuits. Crow consulted on policy. Rainbow Task Force his redemption arc. David rescinded expulsion, scholarship intact. But scars lingered. Joseph's family relocated taqueria booths for safety. David's mom eyed apartments in the city. Their love, tested, emerged tempered, deeper, with boundaries etched in loss. Graduation neared, caps and gowns a hard-won armor. Rehearsal under stadium lights. David and Joseph stole a kiss behind podium, crowd oblivious. To new beginnings, Joseph toasted with contraband flask. But the true peak, a quiet ceremony at the quarry, just them and stars. Rings exchanged, simple bands from pawn shop, vows etched eternal. They made love on blankets spread over stone, slow and sacred, bodies hymns to survival. Climax whispered promises, afterglow cradling dreams. Yet, in triumph's shadow, quiet by kitsch loomed, not defeat, but departure. Joseph's acceptance to Chicago Art Institute arrived. Full ride. Go, David urged, masking ache. I'll follow after state. Parting's hook. Love's cost, bittersweet. June's sun baked Willow Creek into submission. Asphalt shimmering like regret under relentless glare. Graduation day dawned crisp. The football field transformed into a sea of blue robes and mortarboards. Brass band blaring pomp and circumstance with Midwestern gusto. David sat ramrod straight in the folding chairs. Program clutched like talisman. Joseph's knee brushing his in silent solidarity. The air hummed with finality, speeches droning, names called like roll in a war zone. When David Ellis echoed, cheers erupted from the GSA section. Ms. Rivera's whoop piercing polite claps. He crossed stage, diploma heavy as vindication, catching Joseph's eye in the stands. Pride, love, the unspoken ache of goodbye. The afterparty was a kegger in Luca's backyard. Bonfire crackling against twilight. Bodies swaying to indie rock from a Bluetooth speaker. Willow Creek's youth shed skins. Queer kids dancing uncloseted. Straight allies toasting change. David and Joseph found a hammock strung between oaks, swaying gentle as they traded stories of futures. David's law clinics for LGBTQ plus youth. Joseph's murals in Boys Town. We'll visit every weekend, Joseph promised, fingers tracing David's jaw. The kiss deepened, hammock creaking protest, hands wandering under gowns until cheers pulled them apart, laughing breathless. But romance's tender underbelly bared that night. Alone in David's room, boxes half-packed for dorm life, they moved with deliberate slowness, unbuttoning like unwrapping gifts, lips mapping freckles and fades. Joseph's tongue swirled lazy patterns on chest, drawing shivers. David's hand stroked lower, eliciting moans that vibrated bone deep. They aligned, entry patient, rhythm building to symphony, hips rolling waves, gasps crescendoing into shared release, sticky and profound. I carry you here, Joseph whispered, hand over heart. David nodded, tears pricking. Love's profundity, parting's price. The cover-up's full unraveling hit headlines midsummer. Ohio Superintendent exposes decades of abuse in viral testimony. Hargrove indicted on tampering charges. Tommy's family settling civil suits. Willow Creek morphed, rainbow crosswalks painted downtown, GSA funded proper. Crow, graying gracefully, became advocate, speaking at Pride events with Joseph's sketches as slides. Elias lives in this, he'd say, and Joseph would nod from audience, David's hand in his. Yet humaneness lay in nuances, not neon victories. Joseph's departure to Chicago sliced deep. A Greyhound station farewell, duffels at feet, Mom's tear-streaked hug. Call every day, she admonished, leaving them alone on bench. David clung, kiss fierce against bus rumble. This isn't end, it's intermission. Joseph boarded, window smile wavering, taillights vanishing down highway like comet trail. David drove home empty, Quarry his solace, swimming laps until exhaustion drowned sorrow. College blurred into reinvention. Ohio State's sprawling campus a queer haven. David diving into poli-sci seminars, interning at Lambda Legal. Weekends meant Amtrak to Chicago, Joseph's tiny Wicker Park apartment a pied terra of chaos. Canvases everywhere, bed a nest of thrift sheets. Reunions were fireworks. Airport dashes into arms, nights lost in exploration. Joseph's new piercings nipped playfully, David's growing confidence in commands. One stormy evening, thunder rattling windows, they experimented. Ropes from art supply, trusts tested in binds, pleasure edged sharp as lightning. Yours? Joseph gasped, bound and begging. David's control yielding to mutual unraveling, peaks thunderous. But distance bred quiet conflicts. Joseph's late nights at galleries, David's exam marathons. A fight over Thanksgiving. Missed train, petty barbs, culminated in makeup sex raw and reconciliatory. Apologies etched in bruises. We're learning, David panted, body slick. Humaneness in growth. Therapy sessions via Zoom. Letters like old souls, Joseph's illustrated missives, David's typed manifestos. Years folded. David graduated, clerking at a Columbus firm specializing in education equity. Joseph exhibited in Soho, murals gracing subway walls. Willow Creek receded, but pulled periodic, Crow's holiday cards, Ms. Rivera's visits. They bought a brownstone in Brooklyn. Ring exchange understated at City Hall, vows echoing Elias's. In shadows and light. Wedding night in their sun-dappled bed. Love-making marathon. Positions playful, climaxes cascading, laughter mingling with moans. The by-kitsch's gentle twist. Not loss, but legacy. Returning for a high school assembly, David keynote, Joseph sketching live. Facing fresh faces, he shared scars. They called me distraction, but love, it's the sharpest focus. Applause thundered, Tommy, reformed in juvie counseling, nodding from back. Afterward, Quarry rendezvous. Them, older but unchanged, swimming nude, bodies toned by time. On blanket, under harvest moon, they coupled leisurely. Fingers, tongues, union profound, release a quiet roar. Forever's our distraction, Joseph quipped, and David laughed whole. In Willow Creek's transformed heart, they planted seeds. Annual scholarships in Elias's name, art programs for queer youth. Humaneness prevailed, not erasure of pain, but alchemy into purpose. Love, dramatic and deep, wove through betrayals to this. Two men, hands clasped on porch swing, watching sun dip over fields once hostile. Distractions? Hell, they were the revolution.